The CDC finally says what we all knew: coronavirus spreads via aerosol transmission. What to make of that horrible jobs report on Friday, and grading Elon Musk in his SNL debut. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good Monday morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for May 10th, 2021. As you can tell, I am Carlo Versano, and Jill Wagner is off today. Jill apparently needed a day off just to recuperate from all of that teasing that I gave to her last week, making fun of her for her high school Hall of Fame entry. I joke. Yes, but Jill's off for the day, but I do have the big man himself, Baker Machado, filling in as usual. Baker, how are you?
Good to see you, Carlo. Always love being on this. I can only imagine the teasing, how bad it must be if Jill was like, I'm taking a 3-day weekend because of all of this.
Jill needed a mental health day just to come back from how badly I made fun of her.
By the way,
I'm just kidding.
No, by the way, she was like her elementary school the other day. She was like an all-star from her elementary school. I think we should know Jill, I think, is in like the Hall of Fame at her university.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, so she is your shining star student in every aspect, Carlo.
Oh, we shouldn't make fun. Baker, tell me about your Mother's Day. How was your Mother's Day? Did you talk to Mama Machado?
I did. My mother was lovely. I FaceTimed with her yesterday. She's back in Colorado, but I had to spend the whole weekend with my in-laws this weekend. So you have everybody inside of a tiny little house all weekend. So I'm very happy to be back at the office today, Carlo. How about you?
Yes, I saw my mom yesterday. She was doing well. And thank you to everybody who wrote in and said I'm an idiot for even questioning whether I had to get Becky a Mother's Day gift. Given that she's yes. Basically, as soon as I said that, I knew what the answer was. But I thank everybody for writing in and saving me a major headache. So thank you, guys.
All right. Well, let's get to some of the big stories, Carlo, especially the big ones that went under the radar on Friday. The CDC has finally updated their public guidance on how COVID spreads, finally acknowledging for the first time that airborne transmission through microscopic droplets, known as those aerosols, is indeed a factor. And they're also emphasizing that people still can get infected even if they're more than 6 feet from an infected person, because those aerosols can float in the air for an extended period of time. Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci is now saying he's okay with loosening those indoor mask requirements, that as Americans become more vaccinated. The rate of vaccinations here in the U.S. continues to decline, and some states are now turning their shipments down from the federal government. This as their stockpiles continue to grow. Right now, Carlo, more than a third of the population is considered fully vaccinated. We're close, though, I would say, to 50% of the country at least receiving one dose of the vaccine.
Yeah, good. Could be better. The CDC thing on Friday was big. This aerosol thing is really, really important for people to understand, right? Because basically what it means is a lot of the stuff that we've been doing is kind of invalidated by this, right? Like the 6 feet guidance in particular, that guidance was put in place because the belief was that these things, that the virus particles were coming out of your nose and mouth to a degree at which they were big enough that they were kind of like coming out and then they would drop to the ground, right? But when it's aerosols, these are really tiny droplets. So what that means is you're I don't know what that word is, excurating, basically blowing them out of your mouth and nose, and they stay floating around, right? So what that means in effect is, again, outdoors is basically safe. These things are not floating around in the outdoors, but they are a big problem in the indoors. So what this means, it's even more true than it ever has been, that the big issue is ventilation. It's having the windows open, having the air going, and having a close-fitting mask when you're inside and you're not vaccinated. Look, I think it's good that Fauci is coming around and saying that, some of these mask mandates can start to loosen because once you're vaccinated. I'm 2 weeks post second shot as of today. Actually, I think as of yesterday. Thank you.
It's a big moment.
It really is. Have you? Are you
Oh
fully
yeah.
vaxxed, right?
A week ago, I finally was my 2 weeks when I had gotten my second
Yeah.
shot. And Carlo, it felt like Dorothy when she was in Oz, because it's like that moment that you're like, I can finally start living a little bit of my life. And weirdly,
Yeah.
coincidentally, was around the time that the CDC announced that you didn't have to wear your mask outside as much anymore. So it's like bit by bit, you're slowly starting to get your life back. To what you've been saying about the CDC, look, I've given the CDC some slack, given the fact that this is brand new to all of us. They're
Sure,
trying to
yeah.
research everything as much as we are. They're trying to give the best recommendation as much as possible. This also is very frustrating for a lot of us as well, because things they say are okay then turn out not to be okay, but things then they say are not okay then turn out to be completely okay. I can't tell you how many times the aerosol thing became an issue. I can't tell you how many times they thought cardboard, where it basically could stay on cardboard. I had relatives who left their Amazon packages outdoors for 24 hours just to kill any of the aerosols out there. The thing epidemiologists continue to say, Carlo, because it looks like here in the United States we're not going to reach herd immunity, and the New York Times reported over the weekend it doesn't look like globally we're going to get to herd immunity either. The numbers obviously to always pay attention to, the vaccination rates as we talked about just a moment ago, but then deaths with COVID. The number of cases in the United States yesterday, we reached about 22,000 new coronavirus cases yesterday, but the deaths were actually down 6% over the last 6 weeks. Only 246 people died. Now, I don't want to gloss over that because, again, that's 246 people that died. But in totality, that is going to be the number that epidemiologists continue to look at to see how much we've got this pandemic under control. If the deaths start to continue to come down, even though cases are up, because, again, a lot of these variants out there are super out of control right now. Even though cases are up, you're going to see a lot of people still get the cases, but as long as we're seeing deaths decline, that is basically going to be the way that we know if we got this under control.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to the point that you just made, that like just because we're not going to reach herd immunity, or we may not reach herd immunity, doesn't mean that this thing is going to be an out of control pandemic forever. It means it's going to be like tuberculosis or the flu, right? So we'll deal with it. So look, like you said, I feel like Iron Man today, man. I'm going to go out, and this is my plan. I am going to a diner. I have not been to a diner in over a year. I'm going to go to the closest diner that I can find to my new apartment.
What are you going to order?
I'm going to go. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to go sit inside a booth. I'm going to bring my paper copy of the New York Times from the weekend that I didn't read yet. I'm going to order a tuna melt with a side of white toast, a chocolate egg cream. I'm going to consume it inside, and I'm going to leave a big tip, no mask, and I'm going to dedicate my tip and my meal to the scientists at the Pfizer Corporation who allowed me to do that.
Yes, good for you, Carlo. And by the way, it'll be the best diner experience you've had in
I can't wait.
It'll feel like the first time you went to the diner when this all happens.
I've been thinking about it all weekend.
All right, so let's move now, Carlo, to politics here. The Republican Party faces a huge test this week, whether or not they're still the party of Trump. And by the way, I think most of us know the answer to whether or not that is true or not. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is now publicly backing Representative Elise Stefanik to replace Representative Liz Cheney in her leadership role within the party, all but ensuring that Liz Cheney will be ousted for failing to support former President Trump. Now, this is all likely going to happen on Wednesday, Carlo. By the way, we should know former President Trump has backed Elise Stefanik as well. Her evolution, by the way, from a upstate New York moderate to MAGA, intense conservative is overwhelming, because we've seen the Club for Growth really come out and attack her, saying that she's not really that true of a conservative. It really was after the impeachment hearings that the Trump light switch really flicked on for Elise Stefanik. Right. But larger picture, everybody's trying to figure out, what is Liz Cheney's end game here? Does she potentially want to run for president in 2024 as the anti-Trump Republican? What does she want to do at the end of the day? Because it looks like Wyoming, her congressional district, likely won't even vote to keep her in Congress in 2022 in the midterms. So a lot of big moving pieces here. But Carlo, there is no room for dissent if you are not on the same page with President Trump and this party.
The Stefanik thing is interesting because she's not really that conservative.
No, she's
Liz
not.
Cheney has a much more conservative record in terms of her actual policy.
Elise Stefanik, according to the Club for Growth, has a 50% conservative voting record. Liz Cheney's is almost in the 80s. That is a huge difference.
So what does that tell you? It tells you that the Republican Party, as it's currently constituted, isn't about policy. It isn't about policy. It's just about Donald Trump. It's just about Trumpism. I don't know what the end game here is. Jill and I talked about this the other day, but Republicans in Arizona, they're still in the process of auditing the 2020 election results. They're looking for evidence to support these false claims that vote was rigged, doing things like inspecting the ballots for bamboo fibers, which is based on a conspiracy theory that a plane from South Korea flew to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport after the election, filled with counterfeit ballots. I mean, that's what's happening in this country right now. This is like beyond the beyond here. But I guess the bet from people like McCarthy and Republicans in power who aren't named Liz Cheney is that they cannot afford to alienate Trump voters in the midterm. So they're going to do whatever that means. And I've been saying that I don't think that Trump is going to run in 2024. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
because clearly he's going to be the nominee if he decides to run.
A couple things. Lindsey Graham, I think, said it correctly over the weekend, which was, or in terms of giving you that idea of what the playbook is going to be for Republicans, where he essentially said, we need Donald Trump to be successful in this party. And I think he's right in the sense because of how much we see in polls Republican voters are Trump voters. There is a very small amount of Republican, traditional establishment Republican voters and a very large swath of Trump Republican voters. So Lindsey Graham essentially saying you need Donald Trump to help you win. The problem that we've been seeing so far is when Donald Trump's name is not on the ballot, do those Trump voters actually show up to the polls? So that is going to be a huge issue for Kevin McCarthy, who, by the way, Kevin McCarthy's doing this because he wants to be Speaker of the House. And based on history, based on the reapportionment of what the census data is going to look like, Republicans likely are going to take the House in 2022. But Democrats feel very optimistic, Carlo. The Democratic strategists I talked to out there believe that Donald Trump is going to cannibalize the party so much that it's actually going to motivate Democratic voters to help Democrats stay in the power for the midterms in the 2022 elections. So this is all going to be really interesting. And 2022 is going to be a huge case study for us, Carlo. When Trump is not on the ballot, can he motivate Republican voters to get to the polls? So far,
look at Georgia. He didn't.
He didn't do it. He actually cost them votes there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this argument that you need Trump, in order to win these elections. Well, he lost his reelection. He lost the House and the Senate when he was in power. So I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is just so mind-boggling.
And by the way, to your point, and if the former president runs again in 2024, if I had to ask, if I had to guess right now, I say he doesn't. One, because I think he likes the idea that we talk about him running. I think the idea of him staying in the news and this almost, he's a producer, a television producer in this sense, because you're talking about him potentially running, keeping that narrative going. He wants that. But also, I feel like the Facebook decision really hurts him. Yes, he's going to be able to get small donor money going to his campaign website, but not having Facebook at all to campaign, to put out his message, all of that stuff, Carlo, I think is really detrimental to him potentially running, because we knew he did well in 2016 and in 2020 because he had social media behind him. Can Trump basically do all of that without social media? I don't know if he can.
Yeah, it's a good question.
All right, Carlo, let's move on from there. Let's go overseas, Carlo. Why don't we? Violence in Afghanistan has now gone from bad to worse since the U.S. announced that they were withdrawing all their remaining troops from that country. A triple bombing that targeted a high school in that capital killed at least 68 people, nearly all of them teenage girls. Rights groups say the brazen attack likely a preview of what's to come once U.S. forces are out of Afghanistan for good and the Taliban reconstitutes control in that area. This is a really tough position right now for Joe Biden right now, because you're even having Democrats like former presidential candidates like Hillary Clinton say that this was a really bad decision to pull all the troops out of Afghanistan. This is going to be a tough walk here for Joe Biden to actually do this.
First of all, Hillary, if there's somebody who I couldn't care less about what she has to say about things, Hillary Clinton would be that person. So honestly, okay, whatever. Thank you, Hillary. I appreciate it. But this story actually has really been upsetting me this weekend, because I mean, if you really read, the New York Times did a really fantastic piece of reporting on what happened at this school in Kabul. So these girls are members of this Hazara ethnic minority. This is one of the many persecuted minorities by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And they're one of the more progressive in the sense that they have the gall to try and send their daughters to school, right? Which is a big no-no for the Taliban. We can't have women learning, right? So, look, I completely, like most people, and I believe that there should be no American troops on the ground in Afghanistan anymore. 20 years is way too long as it was. Yes. But that being said, why can't we just drone strike these scumbags back into the Stone Age, or I guess in this case, out of the Stone Age, without boots on the ground? And this is probably a controversial thing to say, especially for my fellow libs who are against, the drone war, as it were. But I mean, why can't the international community led by the United States come out and say, look, Taliban leaders, this is not acceptable, right? We're going to leave, but we're not going to allow you to bomb and destroy dozens of schoolgirls, right? That's not okay. Right. So you do that, you kill 50 Afghan schoolgirls, we're going to drone strike 100 of your people, and maybe there's going to be some collateral damage, and that will be really bad if that happens. But we're not going to let this happen. It's not going to be acceptable. So that doesn't mean that we're going to have boots on the ground. That doesn't mean there's going to be American troops in Kabul. But I mean, it's why we have the CIA, right? It's why we have counterintelligence. It's why we have a drone operation. That's what this is for. It's just so sad. Like, you think about this stuff, right? Like, Baker, you and I basically won the humanity Powerball, being born white men in the late 20th century. Absolutely. Right? I mean, it doesn't get any better in the history of the world than what we have, basically. If you have the bad luck to be born a female in Afghanistan in the early 21st century, you might as well be living in another time. And I think it's our responsibility in the international community to try and protect these people. And I don't know exactly what that means, and I don't think it means going to war, but we cannot let this kind of thing happen.
Listen, you bring up a lot of very good points, Carlo, and the big question is without a physical presence there from troops, what sort of presence do you have in Afghanistan? What sort of things did the Biden administration, are they learning from the Obama administration when the Obama administration pulled out of Iraq, and subsequently ISIS was created as a result of all of that, which we saw conservatives really go after the former president for that. I don't know what the Biden administration's plan is going to be on this. You mentioned drones. Former President Obama was harshly criticized for presence of drones in the Middle East. So I don't know how this is all going to work, Carlo. This is a very, very tricky and delicate situation, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
All right,
you haven't solved the Afghanistan war on
not yet. That's a little out of my pay grade. But one area I am a little bit more I'm more familiar with is that jobs report that came out on Friday. Very disappointing, Carlo. Only 266,000 jobs were added in the month of April compared to the expectations of 1 million. We even had some economists predicting almost 2 million jobs potentially would have been added for the month of April. This now, Carlo, has led to increased calls to cancel the enhanced unemployment benefits extended in the last stimulus bill, which some are believing are creating a labor shortage that threatens to hold back the economic recovery. Now, the Chamber of Commerce is now calling for that extra $300 weekly benefit now to be canceled. But even before that jobs report, Carlo, South Carolina and Montana announced they were going to kick people off of the federal program at the end of June. What's your take on all of this first, Carlo? What after that really abysmal number that we got on Friday?
It was certainly shocking. I was shocked by it. That being said, though, that's my new thing here. I say that being said, it's becoming a little bit of a crutch, and I'm sorry for that. But no, my take is basically everybody needs to cool their jets. I slept through most of college, including statistics class. But the one thing I do remember is that when you get a big anomaly in data, rather than lose your mind and jump to conclusions, the thing you're supposed to do is wait and see if it's a trend or if it's an outlier. So I think it'll be very important to see if the May report comes in as bad as April, or if this looks like it was just a potential outlier. I mean, look, I think that there's certainly, blip. I think that there's certainly, I just know anecdotally, there's certainly people that are staying on the sidelines because the unemployment benefits are keeping them from looking for work. But keep in mind, I mean, the pandemic is still happening. A lot of these people are women who have the burden of dealing with childcare, and there's a lot of daycares that still aren't open, schools that aren't fully open. So, this narrative that it's just like there's a bunch of really lazy people out there who just want to take the government money and wait. I don't know if I necessarily buy that yet. I think we got to keep seeing, keep waiting to see more data.
Look, there were some promising parts in this jobs report. The fact, literally for the last 3 months, Carlo, we are averaging a little bit more than 100,000 restaurant, bar, hospitality workers getting jobs. That is good because, again, we know that was one area that was really hit hard by the pandemic. The areas that are the most concerning, though, these are construction, these are retail. Retail, it has been shedding jobs. Retail, I think, lost almost 20,000 jobs in the month of April. That is very concerning because these are places that should be open by now. These are places that should at least, even if it's 10 to 20% capacity, even 50% capacity, you got to have retail at least working as well. So maybe that is a trend that more people are just buying too much online and not going to physical stores. The question that will be, Carlo, heading to July, when almost everything is going to be back open 100%, if we're having this issue where we're still only bringing in 250,000 jobs by July, that is going to be a really, really, really big concern. Are these people that are sitting on the sidelines that just enjoy the unemployment benefits? I'm sure there's a very small percentage of those that are. Are there people that are just waiting for the perfect job and are not getting any jobs? That could be a small percentage as well. How much does does childcare and all that other stuff play a part in this? I think it does. I think it plays a huge part of it, given the fact that women and people of color are hugely disproportionately affected by this. I think the black unemployment rate is still close to 10% right now, Carlo. So I feel like there's a lot of pieces that are a part of all of this. The good parts are, obviously, hospitality is getting back on track, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I heard a rumor today that Chipotle is going to raise their minimum wage by $1 or $2, probably for this reason, to get more people coming back.
Absolutely. Okay, Carlo, let's move on to the story that I was obsessed with all weekend, and it's the Kentucky Derby. That horse that won the Kentucky Derby has now failed a post-race drug test. We're talking about Medina Spirit. It tested positive for excessive amounts of a steroid that is used to treat pain and inflammation, leading Churchill Downs to suspend Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert and putting the Colts' victory now in jeopardy. Now, we should note Bob Baffert has denied any wrongdoing. He has also promised to be transparent with this investigation. But I was reading in ESPN, Carlo, horses don't usually get their wins taken away from them. And the last time this has ever happened was in 1968. Dancer's Image was the only horse to be disqualified for medication after winning the Kentucky Derby. Again, that happened in 1968. But one thing that's also interesting is Medina Spirit is Bob Baffert's 5th horse now that has been known to have failed a drug test in just over a year. Now, Bob Baffert continues to say he doesn't know how this happened whatsoever, and all indications are Medina Spirit is still going to run in the Preakness this weekend. But this is a huge story. I mean, even former President Trump actually had to release a statement about how crazy this story was this weekend.
Really? Did he?
Yeah, he did. He said it's part of the reason why the country is in decline when, Medina Spirit is failing the drug test.
Oh yeah, horse racing, a bastion of I don't know. I mean, PEDs and horse racing. Like, is that surprising to anybody here?
No, and I should know. By the way, apparently, I don't know too much about the bylaws here, but if the horse can have this drug, I guess the drug itself is not banned, but I think they have to have it a certain amount of days before the race. So I think if it's 14 days before the race, it's fine. The other big question is out there, Carlo, let's just say you put money down and you won money on Medina Spirit. Do you get to keep that money? And if you lost money on Medina Spirit, do you get that money back? The answer to those is no and no. You get to keep your money if you won it, and you don't get to get a reimbursement whatsoever, apparently, according to ESPN.
Interesting. That's why I don't bet.
Yes, well, especially on horse racing. Okay, we got to talk about Elon Musk because, Carlo, that was the other big story that happened this weekend. About 5 million people, which, by the way, not too bad, tuned in to watch Elon Musk host SNL this weekend. It is the 3rd highest rated episode so far this season. Again, not amazing, but not too bad. Now, Musk's performance, it's getting okay reviews. One columnist out there said he brought a mix of humility and hubris to the show. Another saying he provided a much-needed jolt to the show. I would probably disagree with that. Now, Elon Musk did make a little bit of news. He did announce in the opening part of the monologue that he has Asperger's syndrome. He said he believes he's the first person to ever be on SNL with Asperger's syndrome, although we should note a lot of people pointed out that Dan Aykroyd actually had it back in the 1980s, so way before all of this. Now, also the price of Dogecoin, that is an area we've been watching with SNL. That is the cryptocurrency that Elon Musk loves. It did lose about a third of its value. This after Elon Musk said in the Weekend Update skit that he called it a hustle on that skit, which was pretty hilarious also. And they essentially got him to basically say that at the end, which was like the funniest part. I think he did okay. I'll give him an A for effort because I think a lot of people think, okay, this is this big, guy. He's the second richest person in the entire world. Are you expecting him to be an Oscar winner on something like this? No, I don't think a lot of us have ever heard him outside of an earnings call or maybe a clubhouse appearance do anything like this. So I'll give him an A for effort, but I definitely think he's got a little bit more work to do if he wants to do this again, Carlo.
Doge, by the way, lost more value during the airing of SNL than Tesla has made in profits through its entire existence.
Wow, did not know that.
Yeah, so it's almost like some of these crypto coins don't actually have a store of value, and they're just entirely speculative, huh? I didn't actually get to. I was so busy this weekend, I didn't get to watch the whole thing. I've seen some clips. The one clip that I loved was the spoof of the HBO detective show that they did, making fun of that case. Murder.
Yes, Murder Dirter, where they basically say everybody in Pennsylvania sounds like that.
Yes. Oh God, that was good.
If I had a recommendation, the one sketch that Elon Musk did that I actually thought was really funny was they did a thing called The Astronaut, which was basically Pete Davidson.
That was clever.
Yeah. Pete Davidson gets sent up to like the moon or to Mars. Elon Musk is in the control center, and it's actually very funny. That was probably the only sketch I thought was good. His Wario, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, he's not an actor, and he's
exactly.
a weirdo. Like, of course he's a weirdo. He's basically, I mean, he said as much. He's like, what do you expect? Like, I've reinvented electric cars, and I'm sending, spaceships to the moon. Like, you think I'm going to be like a normal guy?
Yeah, exactly. No, not going to happen. By the way, his girlfriend, Grimes, she was in a couple sketches also. The one thing I was waiting to hear was how do we pronounce his child's name? They did make a joke about that, but they did not tell us how to pronounce it. It's the one with like an X and a 12 and all these other things inside of it. But other than, listen, I'll give him an A for effort. It's not going to be, it's not the best one out there, but I'm still fine with it. Keegan-Michael Key is going to be the next one, and he's going to be much better.
He'll be good. He's an actual comedian. Okay, we're way over today, Baker. That always happens when you come on,
I'm
man.
A chatty Cathy,
we just talk. We are. That's okay. That's okay. All right. Okay, guys, that's what you need to know for Monday, May 10th. Joe will be back tomorrow. Baker, thank you as always for pinch hitting, and we'll see you guys mañana.